I've been learning game development for the past year, and animation is probably what I enjoy most about the process. So I was thinking about attending this video game 3D animation school, but they're asking for 2 dessins originaux, tabarnak. There's no way I can draw 2 original characters showing emotions and in different poses. I can barely draw anything. For my portfolio to give to the school, I had the clever idea to make a game that will showcase my knowledge so far. I'm actually making a video about my portfolio game, so subscribe if you're interested. But clearly the game I'm making is not enough because the first requirement for the admission is 2 drawings. I only have 1 month left to send my portfolio, but I need at least 3 weeks to finish my game. So this gives me 1 week to learn drawing and make 2 characters. I will then 3D model one of the characters for my drawings and use it as a main character for my portfolio game. I attended a few drawing fundamental courses with a group of people at my local library, so this is giving me somewhat of a head start, but all I know so far is pen control and a bit of perspective knowledge. I always wanted to learn drawing, but never had the motivation to do so. Once I started 3D modeling, I was mostly using images found on the internet as references, and learning to draw would make it possible to use my imagination as a reference for my video game objects and characters. So to help me go through the intense learning process of learning drawing in 1 week, I'll be using a video game concept art course that I have in my backlog. It's a course I paid $10 for, and the teacher is one of my favorites, Grant Abbott. I know there's a lot of free resources on YouTube, but I'm used to Grant Abbott's calm way of teaching, so I don't mind shelling out a few dollars for his course to support him. Alright, so let's get started. I decided to use my drawing tablet and Photoshop for most of my week. I usually use a drawing tablet to sculpt in Blender, but now it feels way different when using it for drawing. This is also a good opportunity to get more familiar with Photoshop. At the beginning, my drawings were not matching what I was actually doing on the tablet, and it was because of my ultra-wide monitor. Everything was being stretched. I switched to force proportions in the tablet settings and it fixed it right away. Now it was time to load up the video game concept art course. It's probably my best chance to get a few characters by the end of the week. Already during the sword and axe exercise, I can feel way more confident with where my lines are starting and finishing. It took me about an hour of practice to get used to my new tools. But once I got into more complex drawings like the floating castle exercise, I was having trouble again. It's hard to go from sketchbook to drawing tablet. I used to rotate around my sketchbook to make straight lines, but now it's a bit more complicated. My first day was very exhausting. There's so many new things to process, but I feel pretty confident for the rest. I'll try to finish the course in 3 days and work on my characters after that. At the end of the day, I went to the library to see if a few books could help me out. I found one of the coolest art books I've ever seen. I'll definitely go through it this week. I started the second day by looking at drawing tablet techniques to get tips on how to get used to it. I know practice will get me there, but I only have 6 days left to finish my 2 characters, so if I can get a few techniques, I'm all ears. It was 5 AM and I was following one of the tips I saw on YouTube. To play a no-su game where you have to tap with the pencil at the right place and on beat. It was a crazy way to start the day. Then I loaded up Photoshop to make a few lines and circles to get back into it. After making a few small characters without thinking about proportions, I made one with a bit of color and shading. Blocking characters with lines on their body to show the direction they're facing really felt like I was getting closer to my goal. Now the ballet dancer exercise was quite a challenge, but a rewarding one in the end. It took me about an hour while following the teacher's guideline, and it gave me such a big boost of confidence. I can finally be proud of something I drew. It's crazy how the shadows and highlights give the image such a different look. The human proportion part is a chapter I've been waiting for. This is the basics of character creation and something I have to make sure it gets in my head. The front view went well, but I still have a hard time adjusting to the drawing tablet. But this is on me since I'm the one who chose to add this extra challenge. Side view gets weirder, but it's still mostly the same. I speedrun it on my own just to test myself. I practiced a lot using randomly generated pictures to get better understanding, and that was it for today. It's already day 3, and if everything goes well, I'll be finishing the course this morning. Now with the clothes on, it's another story. I made a police officer, which wasn't too bad, and then it was time for twisted poses, and these are quite difficult to get a grip of. After doing the teacher's example, I tried it on my own with someone using a bow. It wasn't very twisted, but I liked the pose, so I gave it a shot. I skipped the perspective chapters, but now there was a perspective exercise for characters. I was a bit rusty from the lessons I took a few months ago, but it came back gradually. Doing the superhero flying up in the sky was one of my favorite parts. You can really feel the movement of the character when doing foreshortening, which is making parts of the body bigger so they can look closer. Okay, now that the proportion chapter is done, let's start the face chapter. This part is extremely technical. You have to start with a perfect circle. Maybe I should have used the circle tool in Photoshop, but instead I decided to do it manually. There you go. After creating a small guide that looks like a crosshair, I draw an angled line on each side right behind the second third of the guideline. Yeah, as I said, this part is very technical, and if you make it wrong, it will look wrong. Obviously, this is my first time doing it and I'm following along a tutorial, but I was quite pleased with the result. I'll do a few on my own to get a bit better. I tried to speedrun it in less than 5 minutes, but this is so hard to get right. I was following the tutorial to draw the female face, and you can clearly see the difference between the one on the left that I tried to do on my own and the one on the right where I'm following a teacher step by step. The course took me longer than expected and I couldn't finish in time by the end of day 3, but I'm exhausted now and I have to call it a day. Day 4. Screw it, let's get into it and start doing some characters. I already have the 3D model of one of the characters I want to make, so I'll make it easy for me and start with this one. It's hard to get the proportions right, especially since my model isn't perfectly proportional either. I'll do my best to get it as clean as possible. I actually like it. Doing the side view wasn't too bad either. I'm glad I started with the model I already did in 3D. After doing the front and side view, it's time for the 3/4 view, which I'm not sure if the head placement is right. Anyways, it'll do, I guess. Now let's give him a few facial expressions and some poses like running and jumping to put the squirrel in the dynamic context for the game. This took me a while to get right. After playing around with the poses, I'm finally satisfied with the results. Don't forget that I had a week to get this done with very basic drawing and Photoshop knowledge. The past 3 days were quite intense and now I feel way more confident than I was on Monday. So that'll be it for this character. Day 5. Now I have to make a male character from scratch to use as a reference to 3D model it later on and make him walk around in the portfolio game. Getting started was probably the hardest part on Friday. I only had the courage to get started by 4 PM. Trying to do it on my own was not working out, so I took out one of the books I borrowed from the library about human proportions and started all over again. In the book, they were talking about 7 heads and a half for an average height and 8 heads for a more heroic character. My character is a teacher, and even though most of them deserve to be treated as heroes, I'll make my character average. Sometimes you can't force progress, and today was one of those days. I worked on it for less than 1 hour and wasn't going anywhere. It was actually quite depressing having such a hard time, so I decided to put everything aside and continue later on tonight or tomorrow morning. During the evening, I gave it a shot and came out with something. It took a while, but at least I went to bed knowing my character was in development. Going to bed and coming back to my drawing was very beneficial because it made me take a step back and realize how much the proportions were off. I don't want to make a superhero for the game. This would be useless because he won't be using any superpower. I just want a good looking model teacher with a normal shape. I nerfed down the character a bit and made his legs longer. Making the side view went pretty well, but making the 3/4 view was very hard. I didn't really know how to do it, so I had to look at a bunch of references and highball it. Now this is my last day if I want to stay on track with my timeline. I'll make 2 different poses and a few facial expressions. This shouldn't be too hard, right? Right? I didn't try to mess around on my own this time and went straight to Pinterest to get a walk cycle reference, and then I moved the body parts of my teacher character according to the pose. It took me a while to accept that using references isn't cheating. I'm using my original character and referencing myself with someone else's work to do different poses. My walk cycle looks alright. We'll see how well it is once we animate it in the upcoming video. Now making a riding pose is harder than I thought. I played around with the body parts until it felt somewhat right, and I'll animate the character using this image in Blender for the riding animation. Later that night, I added a few details to give a minimum of personality to the teacher and make sure he's presentable for the portfolio. Looking back at how I started my week and where I'm at now, yeah, there was progress, but this wasn't the intended way I wanted to learn drawing at first. I love going to my weekly drawing courses, but doing an intense learning week like this was more stressful than fun. It felt rushed, and the intention of learning drawing this way wasn't as genuine and organic as learning something gradually. I don't recommend it unless you have no choice like I did. But I'm glad I went through it, and now I have 2 characters to use for 3D animations and more drawing knowledge. The main goal for my portfolio is video game animations, so hopefully they won't judge my drawings too severely. Subscribe and stick around for my upcoming video where I'll show how I made my portfolio game and animations. I think I have a very good idea in my hand. See ya!